Roll call, please.
Counselor Housechild.
Here.
Counselor Nelson. Here. Counselor Geisler. Here. Mayor Boucher.
Here, do any counselors have announcements this evening? Hearing none, I have one before we get started, and that's the subject of public input. We normally have different sections for public discussion on subjects. We will have a section at the beginning of the meeting, which is for public discussion on items, and it says on our agenda here that it's about items not on the agenda. But later on, we will have items that do come on the agenda that we vote on. And if it's an item that we vote on tonight, we will have public discussion with that. And I believe that some of you may be here for a city ordinance change that's on the agenda, but it is a first reading and there is no vote taken on that tonight. So if you have any public input that you would like to give the council on that subject, please do that at the time at the beginning of the meeting. We will have other things like approval of reconstruction payments, and there will be public input at that time on things like that. But just want to make sure that everyone's clear on when public input happens. And since there's no vote taken on the first reading for city ordinances, there isn't a section for public input. If it's a first reading, the second reading will be at the next city council meeting, and there will be time given before the vote is taken for public input also at that time. But if you do have input on those items that are first reading, feel free to come up under item 8, public discussion. Mr. Mulder, correspondence today.
We included 3 items for your information in the packet. If there's other items on the list that you want, just please let us know.
Okay. We have some good news in that all of our tobacco and liquor establishments successfully passed the compliance check.
Yes.
That's good news. We have no presentation on the community recreational initiative at this time, but could you give us a short synopsis of what was discussed?
Yeah, so just briefly, we are continuing the conversations with the school district about exactly how the arena could fit on that property adjacent to the existing arena and how that might fit in with their administration building. We also talked a little bit about the educational efforts that we'll be doing just to explain what the referendum is about and what the impact is. We're developing a piece that will be mailed out later this month. And there'll be also some public information meetings about that topic as well.
Thank you. And now we have that item 8 of public discussion. If any individual wishes to address the council about an item, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We will also open this up to people attending the meeting on Zoom for their public input, but we will try and cover the people in council chambers first. If anyone wishes to speak to the council at this time, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address. Is there anyone in chambers that wishes to do that? We're not talking about any ordinance right now. What I said earlier is that we do have 2 first readings of ordinances this evening. And when those ordinances are voted on, there will be time for public discussion under that item on the agenda. But this evening, those items are not voted on. It's merely a first reading. But if you would like to discuss that, now is the time you can come and give your input to the council. They are first readings, so at the next meeting, we will vote on them and there will be a separate public discussion under each item. So if anyone wishes to address the council, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
So just point of clarification, if folks would like an opportunity today to talk on a particular ordinance,
They could
right
do
now.
that under this point.
Okay.
It's just that under our normal procedures, there's no spot for that when we don't vote on the ordinance.
Right. So if you are here to talk about an ordinance that's not being voted on, you can talk about it now.
Okay. Is there anyone present in chambers that would like to speak to the council at this time? We have a podium here. You could step forward and give your name and address to identify yourself. And we ask for a 3-minute limit. We're not always strict on that. Obviously. Is there something
Very-
you'd like to address the council about? Yes, and that
No.
is one of the items that is a proposed ordinance change. But because it's a first reading, we don't have a section at that point in the agenda that allows for public discussion until next week when we vote on it. Or next meeting when we vote on it. You can speak on it now if you'd like to. I'm just,
Dave Miller, 4793 Anderson Road. I made copies of kind of a letter or presentation here just for consideration, I guess, more than anything. And I guess I've been lucky to be a part of a family that's had a long and storied history in Hermantown. We live in a rural neighborhood surrounded by great neighbors with plenty of space between us to enjoy all that Hermantown has to offer. Recently, we were made aware of an attempt to change the zoning of the Engwall property on Hermantown Road, I meant to say, from R3 to commercial to allow a much more expansive development than was originally approved for the site. I see a number of issues related to this change as follows, and some of these issues carry forward from the original plan. Changing the zoning to commercial could ultimately allow for any commercial development, especially if the plans fall through, many of which do not belong in a residential neighborhood. Even though there are several grandfathered commercial properties in the area, the properties are very low impact and add a very low loading to the area. There's hardly any traffic to and from them. They're very small commercial businesses. Even though there are several, let's see here, access to this property from either the Anderson or the Hermantown roads is limited in placement and involves minimum sight lines due to hills and turns. Although speed limits are 30 miles an hour, the general flow of traffic greatly exceeds posted limits. I would suspect there is data on speed provided by the mobile radar trailer that gets posted around the neighborhood, but I can tell you that 40 miles an hour would be a slow speed on the Anderson Road where we live, and between 40 and 50 is probably the average. But I would encourage folks that if you're looking at this project and considering it to drive through the area, look where the potential is for roads or for access to either the Hermantown or the Anderson Road, and see what kind of obstacles exist there. There's a lot of geography that comes into play. Another point is when a single resident asks for a change in setback from a natural environmental shoreland overlay like Keens Creek, I would suspect they would be denied to be able to reduce that setback. And yet these huge developments get variances, even though they would vastly impact the creek. And we're talking runoff, we're talking just so many things. Minimizing ground cover along the stream. It is a trout stream. There's a lot of impact there. And to be able to change that setback from 150 feet to 50 feet is a fairly extreme change. There's an old cemetery on the property and very close to the proposed building site, if not under it. It would be in the southwest corner of the property. I know about where it is, but not exactly. Another point is when property is zoned commercial, it tends to have a long-term negative impact on the surrounding neighbor's property. And I say that when you think about the corner of Haynes and Maple Grove, when you drive along Maple Grove and you see between Haynes and Stebner Road, as you see these larger developments come into play, the small property owner tends to suffer. This proposed development is huge in scope, even by the existing R3 zoning. Going by the information I've been able to glean, the proposed building is 65 feet tall, which would be probably the front of the building, has 147 units, and that at 2.8 residents per unit, which is, somebody came up with that figure, could put 411 people in one building. This does not include any of the other buildings on the property. That number of units could have 1.5 vehicles for a total of 220 vehicles possibly entering and exiting the property daily. These numbers do not include any of the other developments of the property, as the northern parcel and future development of the 27 acres. What kind of an impact does a development like this have on our fire, utility, and school systems? And I am a bit concerned about the fire, in that the elevations and the abilities of the Hermantown equipment, for that matter, the Duluth equipment, gets kind of limited when we talk about those kind of heights. Let's think about Hermantown for a minute. The website says Hermantown, Minnesota has the advantage of accessible big city amenities while still allowing for country living and a small town community feel. And that's Hermantown. That's comes right off the city website. If this development is proposed for your neighborhood, how would you feel if it was going to be right next door to your houses? If we had a current comprehensive zoning and development plan, and I know Eric's been working on that, if it was in place, is it possible that instead of trying to randomly put little commercial developments throughout the community, that these commercial developments could be developed along a commercial zone and not just put where, it seems like somebody comes up with an idea, there's a piece of property, well, let's see if we can get the zoning changed on it. And what can we do to correct that? And I have faith in Eric and his abilities to look at that. But let's see here. The other thing is I see a zoning change to always allow for bigger and larger zoning changes. In other words, going from R3 to commercial. What would it seem, what sense would it make sense to look at some of the old grandfathered commercial properties in residential areas and say that if the property was to change hands or be inactive for over a year, that they would return to residential zoning? It doesn't always have to get bigger. We can look at properties and perhaps downsize them. And I say that because where our cabin is, if a commercial property is similar to this for over a year, they can't open as a commercial property anymore. Is taxable valuation worth more than a quality neighborhood? And that's something that we really have to think about. Is it time to step back and complete a comprehensive zoning and development plan that groups commercial with commercial and residential with residential? And throughout Hermantown, there's a tremendous amount of wonderful rural residential property, and do we want to change that? Do you want that in your neighborhood? Do we want it in our neighborhood? We don't always have to create new zoning variances when a request comes in. At this point in time, perhaps we can pause on some of this stuff, let Eric and his crew get together on figuring out a good plan for this whole city of Hermantown and give it a chance. In closing too, I think about the future. And if we continue to put these little development zones in residential areas, how does that affect the future? And in closing, I'd say we have to plan now for the future in these type of developments. And I want to thank everybody here on the council for your volunteer time and your time being there, and appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Miller, if you have anything in writing that you would like us to see, you can give that to the city clerk.
Yes, I think I did scatter some around here.
Okay.
Hopefully everybody got a
Yep,
copy.
I did.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council at this time? If so, please state your name and address for the record. I'm sorry.
I was gonna wait till next week.
Well, you can speak
My
again then.
name's Tammy Johnson. I live at 3884 Oakerstrom Road. I think Dave did a great job explaining.
The first name again was
Tammy,
Tammy.
Tammy. My concern is the community. How does adding big developments like apartment buildings and that help us as a community? We're a tight-knit community. My husband's family has been on that property for over 100 years. We do things for each other. When somebody's sick, we know somebody's sick, and then we go over and help them. Putting that type of development in our home is kind of intimidating and scary to me. I mean, I know you want Hermantown to grow. And I know that's not a bad thing, but there's places in Hermantown that are already set up to grow. To have a residential area, have this type of development put in it is intimidating and scary to me. I know I have friends that have moved here. They came here for the school district. They came here for the community. They came here to be part of what we are. I don't think a huge development is what we are. But that's up to you to decide. That's why you're here. And I just hope you're hearing what we're asking.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in chambers that wishes to speak to the council? If so, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Myrna Johnson. I live at 4774 Anderson Road. I spoke a little bit the other night. I need notes because I'm.
Ma'am,
I'm
if
talking
you
about-
could move that,
Okay, sure.
you can turn that towards you too, if you'd like.
The density of this project is a problem. Dave mentioned some numbers, but the total number with the two projects is 484 people on this parcel of land. There are 259 cars that are going to go in and out of these exits onto Hermantown or Anderson Road. And I'm sure you're aware of the entrances to, like to the Ingwells area and the one on Anderson Road. And now we have the trail in there also, so you have to watch for the trail. Traffic has been a problem for a long time. It's heavy and they're speedy. So I would like to know, and I don't know how you're going to answer my questions or get back to me or us, is about the entrances to and from these projects on Hermantown and Anderson Roads. And I'm wondering if you're going to follow, I have several things I want answers on. Will you follow the protections in the land use regulation 560 for the creek, for the natural resources, flooding, pollution, wildlife habitat, water quality? Will that be followed for that? Also, I want to know if in land use, the 51510, it says the siting does not impact, impose, or interfere with backyard privacy of neighborhood property. I want to know if that's going to be followed. And who benefits from these developments other than the private developers? I don't see it. Another question, who is financially responsible for the road between Anderson and Hermantown? Is it us, the taxpayers? Is it the private developer, the private person? Who's going to pay for that? Like Dave said and Tammy said, I get emotional. I love Hermantown. I've been in Hermantown all my life. I love my neighborhood. And we have special qualities. We're unique. And if you flood Hermantown with these big projects, you take away that uniqueness. We have a great school. I worked at the school for 32 years. It's a great size, and the teachers and the staff, they know their students. It's just the right size. In Hermantown, it's not too big, it's not too small. We can compete statewide. It's just that uniqueness, and I don't want that taken away. I don't want to be just another suburban city like the cities down below us. I do appreciate the zoning committee recognizing that the other night. And I hope you think about this and what they were saying. If this big group of people were stuck in your backyard, can you really think about that and imagine how you would feel with 584 people in your backyard? But thank you so much for listening. And I'm sorry I get so emotional, but I love where I live.
Okay, thank you. In answer to some of your questions, a lot of them were so broad that it takes a discussion to answer, not just a quick point or two. But the one that I did see is the entrances, and those are not part of the zoning. Those are part of the approval of the project once it's designed and made. So those are not questions that are part of what's going to be looked at in 2 weeks.
No,
Those are part of what planning and zoning and Mr. Johnson go through when a development proposal comes to them. So,
and I realize that, but I do believe it's something you have to think about
yes,
when you're allowing,
Right.
deciding to allow these projects.
thank you. Hi, name and address, please.
Peggy Harry at 3773 Keene Creek Lane. I've been a resident there since 2004 when we were the first owners of it. And I'm here because I'm concerned about the traffic flow. And I want you to maybe close your eyes and I want you to think about, I'm not sure if it was 127 units or 147. There's 147, and then there's going to be other houses on the other side. Someone? Okay, so let's say 147 units, and most families have 2 cars. Okay? And we are 2.5 blocks from Haynes Road. So how is that going to work with the traffic flow? Hermantown Road is a 2-lane. There are no shoulders. There are no sidewalks. We also have Keene Creek, which we have 44 units, Dave? 44 units. And most of those people have 2 cars. So you're going to have 88 other cars. Now, I know times are different and stuff, but I'm thinking that 6:30 to 8:39, and then the dinner time, how are we going to get in there? I mean, what's the traffic flow going to be like? Haynes Road, Stebner Road, our main arteries from West Duluth and Superior. And the Blotnick Bridge is going to be down for what, 3 years? And they will continue to be main arteries. Can they handle the traffic flow? And that traffic flow is going to come down Hermantown, down Stebner, and down Maple Grove to get to the shops. So I'm seeing this too as a safety hazard or a safety issue. In addition, there are 2 businesses on Haynes Road. There's a gas station and an auto mechanic thing. How are people going to get in and out of that? And then there's a church. And when there's funerals or weddings, that's packed. And then there's also the I don't know, what do you call it, Dave? Those little, there's a daycare.
Ma'am, you need to address the city council. You need to address the city council, not the audience, please.
Okay, well, then there's a daycare and there's an antique shop. So I'm concerned basically about the traffic flow and what it's going to do to the area there. And how that's gonna, and especially in the winter. Because sometimes the snowbanks, you can hardly see to get on the road. And I guess the other gal covered most of that, so, but I think that needs to be looked at. Also, I was at the last meeting and they said that 50% of the fire, it's 50% of the firemen or volunteer, they're down 50%. What's that gonna do? We already have a big building on Uggstead and Miller Trunk, you know, that's pretty new. So are we gonna overwhelm our whole system? That's, I guess, all I have. I just kind of want you to think about that because we have enough systems overwhelmed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please bear with me. I'm not a public speaker. Paul Johnson, 3884 Oakstrom Road. I know this is about zoning C. With zone C, you can put anything in there. A developer has already threatened to remove himself from that. And what could replace it? The previous developer at the Planning and Zoning Board said if this doesn't go.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing what you're saying.
The current developer on the north side of the property has threatened to take his development out of there if this has to go through. So if you do a C and that developer pulls out, you could put 3, 4 of those buildings in there, 5 stories. What are you going to do then with the traffic? And what are you going to do with the neighborhood? So this is about C. So I would appreciate you consider the Planning and Zoning Board decision and not voting for this. They are there to recommend for you, I understand, and it's your decision. So I highly ask you to consider it. This is not the right development for this area. They can be developed in other areas where there's commercial property. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in chambers that wishes to address the council at this time? Name and address, please.
Good evening, Rod Celine, the property owner. My address is 3296 North Little Alden Lake Road. My objective is to try to answer questions or to clarify some of the things that I have heard at the meeting a few weeks ago and tonight. Not trying to be argumentative to anybody in any way, shape, or form, but to set what I believe everybody would agree would be facts. There is no cemetery on the Engwall property. There is a cemetery about 20 feet from the Engwall property, but it is not on the Engwall property. Traffic, absolutely. The year that we are in right now, there is less traffic but on the Engwall property than there has been in the last since 2003 when we built the first part of the garden center. I can tell you roughly the rough traffic numbers that on the months of May and June, the garden center department itself would have 4,000 transactions. Each transaction is a car coming in each month. And so you can do some division there. That doesn't include what we had as retail floral. The retail floral truck coming in and out every day would not include 30 to 60 employees on a year-round basis, depending upon the time of the year, coming in and out on Hermantown Road. So from my perspective, certainly it's not, we didn't have 400 cars a day, but there surely could have been some averages that might be 250. When the corn maze was operating in September and October, there was significant traffic on the weekends when we were open. So again, I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just trying to make sure that some facts are laid out of what we have all experienced there. And if there are any other questions that anybody would have, whether tonight or in 2 weeks, I'll be here to try to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the council at this time? Please step forward and state your name and address.
My name is Don Kalos, it's Kallos, 4775 Anderson Road. I have notes on my phone, so I'm gonna flip back and forth here. Other people brought up quality of living. This type of development does not add to Hermantown. It adds to tax rolls, which is awesome in one sense. But I don't understand why our city has to continue to grow to survive. We can be Hermantown as is. We don't need to continually expand, look for new tax base, add to services, increase our population. We don't need that. We need to have quality living. And if we have quality living, we'll have succeeded as a city. Oh, and my phone locked. A development like this won't add to our city. I look around the room here and I see my neighbors on both sides of me. If this development goes through, that sense of community will be gone. I won't be able to look into a city council meeting with my neighbors because this room will be overflowed. I won't recognize short-term rentals, even if they're at a year long. It's a constant swing in and out. That's not a city, that's a rental property. We're really losing our small town feel with increasing our density. I didn't like the idea of a West Duluth style, yes, West Duluth style housing development where your neighbors are shoulder width apart. My notes are scattered here, so excuse me. The zoning, we tend to be reactive on our zoning. We don't really have a plan. Out my back door is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, airport special zoning.
I'm not sure.
There was some kind of special zone that's right off the back of my property, including the all the way from my backyard up through Fleet Farm. That was a development change.
The Hermantown Marketplace.
Hermantown Marketplace, thank you. It runs all the way up to the airport though. That was supposed to be 3-story buildings was one of the contingencies. Not long ago, we passed, when I say we passed an amendment to allow a higher than 3-story building. Why? Because it was asked for. Here was a creep in what we would allow. Allowing R3 to be changed to commercial, commercial to industrial. Where is it going to stop? So out my back door, I have the Hermantown Marketplace zoning. On my side, I have the trail, and out my front door, if this is approved, I'll have a large scale apartment building along with a high density housing unit. This isn't small town feel. This isn't quality living. I might as well move back to Duluth. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the council at this time? Is there anyone online that wishes to speak to the council through the Zoom meeting? I don't see any hands raised and no one speaking. We'll have one last opportunity for public input at this time. Hearing none, we will close the public discussion and move to the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the last council meeting and accounts payable. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councillor Nelson, second by Councillor Geisler. Roll call, please.
Counselor Geisler. Counselor Nelson.
Aye.
Counselor Housechild.
Aye.
Mayor Boucher.
Aye. Next on our agenda is a motion to approve or deny an application for a temporary service expansion for the Odd Shrine Temple on September 24th. That application has been withdrawn by the Odd Temple, so we will not be considering it tonight. Next is item B, motion to appoint Councillor Nelson to the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Counselor Housechild, second by Counselor Geisler. Do we, Mr. Mulder?
So we're going to start the process for the comprehensive plan hopefully later this month. It'll run about 18 months, and we want to have a steering committee that will kind of direct that process. So that's the list of names, and we wanted one city council member on that committee.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council?
I think Gloria will be a great representative for us from the council, and she's been on council and been a member of this community for a long time. So I think she'll bring a really good perspective.
Thank you.
Since she was born.
Yeah.
Okay, 101 years ago.
Any other comments from council? Is there any public comment on this motion? If so, please step forward and state your name and address for the record. Or if you're online, just state your name and address. Is there any public input on this motion? This is a last opportunity for public input on this motion. With no public input, we'll have a roll call.
Counselor Nelson,
Aye.
Counselor Housechild,
Aye.
Counselor Geisler,
Aye.
Mayor Boucher.
Aye. Ordinances, we have a first reading of ordinance 2022-10. An ordinance recommending that portions of the Hermantown City Code be temporarily suspended to further study Ernebuck requirements for the Hermantown City 2022 bull hunt. That is a first reading. The second reading will be at our next council meeting, and there will be an appropriate time for public input then. Next is the first reading of ordinance 2022-11, an ordinance amending Title II of the Hermantown City Code by amending the official zoning map 4747 Hermantown Road, parcels 395-0010-07045 and 395-0010-07050. This is also the first reading, and there will be more discussion on this at our next meeting. Next is resolutions. Resolution 2022-110. Resolution calling a public hearing on an ordinance amending the fee schedule for licenses, permits, and fees, section 270 of the Hermantown Code of Ordinances. Do we have a motion?
All motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Geisler, second by Counselor Housechild. Mr. Mulder, could you explain this?
Each year we go through our fee schedule and we look at to make sure that that fee schedule is up to date. That also includes the various utility rates that we have for our utilities. And we're recommending a number of changes. Some of those changes require a public hearing before we can do that, including the stormwater fee and also some of the zoning fees. So we are scheduling a public hearing on October 3rd before we have the first and second reading of that ordinance to change those fees.
Thank you. Do we have any input from council? Is there any public input on this resolution, either in chambers or online? If so, state your name and address. Is there any public input on resolution 2022-110? This will be the last opportunity for public input on resolution 2022-110 and a resolution calling for a public hearing on changes to the fee schedule. With no public input, I'd ask for a roll call.
Counselor Housechild.
Aye.
Counselor Geisler,
Aye.
Counselor Nelson,
Aye.
Mayor Boucher.
Aye. Next is resolution 2022-111. Resolution approving pay request number 5 for reconditioning of Highway 53 water tower, Water Improvement District number 318 to Osseo Construction Company LLC in the amount of $25,175.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Counselor Nelson, second by Counselor Geisler. Mr. Mulder.
So this is pay for work through October 19th on the water tower on Highway 53. Most of that work is now completed. We'll have one final payment for the retainage that we're withholding.
Thank you. Do we have any council comment?
I'll just comment that the water tower looks great. That's a nice beacon to our city.
Thank you.
I agree.
Is there any public input on this resolution? If so, please state your name and address for the record. Is there any public input on resolution 2022-111? Last opportunity for public input on the resolution approving a pay request for water tower improvement. Roll call, please.
Counselor Geisler,
Aye.
Counselor Nelson,
Aye.
Counselor Housechild,
Aye.
Mayor Boucher.
Aye. Resolution 2022-112. Resolution approving special use permit for construction of an accessory structure in excess of 1,600 square feet in the R1 zoning district at 58XX Highway 194 and imposing conditions thereon. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Housechild, second by Counselor Nelson. Mr. Mulder.
Let's have Mr. Johnson explain this one.
Mr. Johnson.
Great, thank you very much. This is a application for an accessory structure. Property is located on the north side of 194, midpoint between Midway Road and Solway Road. It's a 5-acre lot. The construction of the accessory building is 2,520 square feet with an approximate height of 20 feet. This use of the building will be to store personal belongings as well as vehicles. There will be no business activities proposed or allowed with that structure. And then the proposed setbacks for this accessory structure greatly exceed any of the required minimums for the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Is there any public input on this resolution? If so, please state your name and address. Is there any public input on resolution 2022-122? Is there any public input? If so, please state your name and address. Roll call, please.
Counselor Nelson,
Aye.
Counselor Housechild,
Aye.
Counselor Geisler,
Aye.
Mayor Boucher.
Aye. Resolution 2022-113. Resolution authorizing and directing the mayor and city clerk to execute and deliver an agreement for consulting services with Hometown Fiber in the amount not to exceed $19,987. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Counselor Nelson, second by Counselor Housechild. Mr. Mulder.
So the broadband task force met with two potential consulting firms on the 29th of August and reviewed proposals from them and recommended Hometown Fiber as the consultant. The first thing we'll do is do kind of an inventory of kind of where internet speeds, where internet speeds reach certain levels and where the fiber is. And so the idea is just to get a better sense of, you know, what it would potentially take if the city were to go into creating its own fiber network.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from council?
I just applaud the task force for moving forward with this. I think, you know, we've we got this group together to really evaluate our current broadband needs in the community. And, I think we've always said from the beginning that we needed to make sure we were taking advantage of current opportunities and moving forward with broadband expansion while looking long-term on opportunities. So this is kind of more on the long-term side of things. And I'm just glad to see it's happening. And I look forward to seeing the results and how we can provide better broadband and more specifically affordable broadband, because a lot of it is expensive as well.
Thank you. Any other comments from council?
I have to agree completely. I've been on the task force, and part of the, if I use the word obstacles that we recognized, were that we did not have this information nor the map. So I think this is going to be a very valuable tool moving forward.
Thank you. I also want to point out that this is using part of a grant from St. Louis County, and 50% of this amount will be city money and 50% from that grant. We still have the remainder of the $25,000 grant with St. Louis County. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on this resolution? If so, please state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone that wishes to comment on resolution 2022-113? Last opportunity for comment on this resolution. If so, state your name and address. Roll call, please.
Counselor Housechild,
Aye.
Counselor Geisler,
Aye.
Counselor Nelson,
Aye.
Mayor Boucher.
Aye. And we're out of items on the agenda except for a closed session. We will have a motion to move into closed session. I would propose that we take a few minutes after that, between now and the closed session, to discuss with the people present in chambers if there's anything they wanted to talk about. But we have a motion to move to closed session.
Motion to close session.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Geisler, second by Counselors Nelson and Housechild. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And we'll take about a 5-minute break in case anyone wanted to talk to any of us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming.